Hello, 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 fans, followers. Thank you for stepping in, stopping by, sticking around today, checking out my video. Today, we are continuing the 100-hour gaming challenge I had going in September. And again, thank you for supporting Stand Up to Cancer. Today, we are voiceover to the recorded on 9/8 Railway Empire 2. This is post-show edited. And continuing the Liverpool story that I started, was supposed to be live audience-led gaming. Again, people stopped in and checked out the video, but didn't stick around and give any comments. I did have a voiceover going on during the game when I was live, but because this is different than playing the World of Warships and having in between battles and a moment to talk, this is pretty much game all the way through for the hour. So, because the game timing was a lot longer than usual, uh, than, than it is on World of Warships or other games I played, uh, I was at 1.5 speed, so talking over a chipmunk at 1.5 speed for the entire hour and 5 minutes wasn't ideal. So I actually muted or pulled the audio from that live feed out. So this is just me talking over watching me play through. I threw some music in there from the soundtrack of the game as well, so that way it just wasn't me talking by myself. So again, as I continue in the Liverpool that I started on a few days prior to this live, it was a different live on the 3rd. Continuing from the Liverpool headquarters, just now I left Carlisle, or actually no, I went to the corn station. I can't remember the name of the corn station, but I went to the left from the city of Carlisle to Meckham, and while talking, introducing the video. But I think the objective today is I'm going to connect Holyhead and Manchester, and mainly get those two, and I'm also going to get the connection bonus for the Holyhead, and there's a grain next to Holyhead. I'll show you in just a minute. But before I do that, I was just kind of looking over all the map. So as you guys know, Railway Empire 2 is a little bit much calmer of a game compared to like Warships or even War Thunder and Conker's Bad Fur Day, other games I play. Um, Railway Empire 2 takes a long time just to spend time building and city building, money, money management system. I can't even talk straight. So it's a lot slower, but there's a lot goes into the gameplay. And so I think right here I was just kind of reminding myself what I was going to do. I was showing you guys the different goods that are in the area, and I was showing you on that chart there to the left the flow of goods and where they come from and who needs them. So part of this game, basically the objective is you want to get goods to the cities, but goods are nothing, and I was kind of explaining this at the time during live, but goods are nothing without people. So your first objective is, if you're playing this game, get my side objectives, my primary objective, because it's time limited, is connection bonuses. But overall, if you want to be successful in this game, you got to get your cities established first. The only reason I do the rural businesses is just to get the connection bonuses. So as you can see there, there's Holyhead. There's Gray next to it. I was just looking at the concession. I would like to purchase the concession for that region. I'll get two cities, Holyhead and Swansea, which is to the left on the other side of that peninsula. And then I'll have, I think it said 7 rural businesses. So once I get that connected, I can build anywhere inside that connection. Holyhead was unique. I've done these before, but I usually like to have 2 stations per city for most of my cities. It's rare for me to accept that only 1 station is going to be worthwhile for that particular city, and this was one of those cities. I could squeeze 2 cities or 2 stations in there, but it would have been much more difficult managing the space and the tracks compared to keeping them combined to 1 station. So 1 station can manage freight and passenger. It's just a lot more difficult, as you'll notice. So there's a little bit of a glitch here. I apologize about that. So as I was looking at the tracks here, I was looking to see the angles, just showing you guys that you could get max speed in 3 sets out of the station, going straight, of course, and then about 5 or 6 degrees to either side. And of course, I can't go to the right. It did show the 5 degrees max, but it was conflicting with the building that's there. So obviously, it's not going to let me build that. But I was showing or demonstrating at least so you could see the angle. So I usually do about 6 miles of a track. So there I was checking to make sure that it was 6 miles of his max, and then I could put 3 tracks total or 2 more tracks for freight. And I usually do 3 tracks per line for a station. Um, 2 tracks go in, 1 track go out, and that's usually how I keep it sorted. I could do 4 in the beginning. When I started playing other games prior to even starting Holyhead or Liverpool, or prior to other games I've been recently playing. Um, I used to do 4 track stations, 2 in, 2 out in either direction, and it takes up too much space and more tracks to manage. It gets too complicated, too much wide. To me, it's rare for me to now do 4 tracks. I've discovered that 3 tracks seem to be just fine. I hardly ever see any conflicts between 2 trains. So with 2 tracks or 3 tracks going into a station, 2 of those tracks are inbound, 1 track is outbound. But those 3 are for one line, and I'll demonstrate here, and I've already kind of showed previous stations those 3 tracks. So right now it's just kind of trying to line up the tracks I'm building to match the lines, the colored lines. Again, as I've said before, explained before, those lines demonstrate the height or the altitude on the map. So I want to make sure that those 2 stations are as level as possible. If they're not level, I find the best route that I could use as many level climbs and declines as best as possible. So that's what I was looking there. Now I'm just kind of jumping around the map now and just showing everything. Again, this is at 1.5 speed, so everything's going faster. So it's hard for me to keep up. But I'm showing my competitors, and I was looking around the map. I wanted to see who else is where. I wanted to make sure I knew where my competitors were. 2 of them I knew of in game. I remember the third one I was still searching for. So I'll take about 5 or 6 minutes, literally game time at least, looking around, and I try to fast forward through that. But one of them you saw it there in the Swedish areas. There's one actually down in the southern Italian area, but I don't see it scrolling through. I'll pass right over it, but it'll be a teal color, and then there will be orange, dark orange, almost reddish orange, like fire orange. In Barcelona, you'll see here in a moment. I'm actually going to pass over Barcelona right, possibly now, to the left. There's Barcelona right there. So that's the third competitor. Well, at least the second one. I spent forever looking for the third one. I couldn't find him. But just give me a moment to at least explain a little bit about the game more so. So you can build freight trains, you can build passenger trains. As you can see, all the different cities and different locations around the map. Each city can have up to 3 manufacturing goods. Usually, the first one's available when the city first starts, and then the second factory is available when your city reaches 3 bars, or I think 40,000 population, if I recall correctly. And then the third factory is available when it reaches, I think, 90,000. There's the teal right there, but I passed right over it as if I wasn't even looking. I kept looking around, so that tells me I was still looking. I didn't see it because I was moving so quickly, and the teal kind of blends in with the map. But so those are my 3 competitors. They were nice and spaced out. Gives plenty of room to build around and get your empire. My main concern was making sure that all of England or all of the United Kingdom was mine, or at least it'll be available to me. And hopefully I won't have anybody interfere, any of the competitors interfere. Uh, for competitors' sake, they're just AI, artificial intelligence, but you can set the settings to different challenging levels and make sure that they will be at least competitive in some nature. On this game, I think it's set to easy or normal, regular. On a game I'm playing by myself, which I'll have future videos of. I've been recording, I just haven't demonstrated yet. I've got it set 1 level higher, so it's slightly more difficult. and they actually get more money than you do, which I thought was not fair, but you know, whatever, right? They get more money and they're more aggressive in their actions when you set the difficulty slightly higher, which actually makes it more fun because at the regular level, they're no, not competitive at all. Anyway, so as I continued on, looking around, so you've got different cities, as I mentioned, you get different manufacturing opportunities. Usually, the computer will purchase manufacturing for you in a city, whatever's good, if you don't purchase it right away when it's available. But a lot of times I go in because I don't like the way the computer purchases the factories. I go in and often delete them. And I'll explain more of that later as I get to certain factories and why I do what I do. But besides the factories and manufactured goods, it requires raw goods from all the resources that you see. So there I'm looking at wool, corn, cattle. Wool turns to fabric, fabric turns to clothing, corn is just food for cities. Cattle turns to meat, which is also food for cities. Wood you can turn into lumber. Wood you can also turn into furniture, and wood you can also use for to combine with steel and make tools. So those are just some examples. You got clay. Things moving so fast. I'm just trying to keep up with it. I saw vegetables at one point, sugar, salt, um, more wood, cattle, wool. Wool's the blue. Looks like cotton balls almost. Um, the red balls are cherries, or not cherries, but apples. They look like apples, but they're actually called fruits if you zoom in and check the name of it. So now that I'm zooming back in here on MacGown Terminal, I continue building. So basically 3 stations or 3 tracks for McGowan. I'm going to do 1 exit and then 2 entry. But I was looking to see how I was going to do my layout. So I'm going to do a T intersection for freight, which is going to connect to the 3 tracks already coming out of the Holyhead, which is a weird city name. I have to remind myself what the city is. Um, Pink, anytime you see pink show up, it's a tunnel. You don't want the tunnels early on. Look to the right, you can see that tunnel right there. It costs 300 alone. If I built that tunnel, it would cost probably half a million with that combined with the track and the tunnel combined. So you want to avoid tunnels early on. You don't want tunnels pretty much at any cost. So as I go from the right lane of the 3, leaving McGowan, goes to the middle lane on the other side. And the reason why it doesn't go number 3 to number 3 or number 2 to number 2, number 1 to number 1 is because normally in between the 2 stations it's 2 tracks, one way, one track going one way, one track going the other way. But then when it gets close to the station, about 6 to 8 miles out, it'll add a track to the right, and that's the 2 lanes going in. And then because I'm not adding a track to the other side, it's 1 lane going out. So I'll demonstrate that here shortly as you guys see me put the directions on. But first, you always want to make sure you build the gridiron first. Because the space is limited, I wasn't adding any extra track, so there's no room for a train to park on that extra track there. But it at least gives extra track in case there's already um, 2 trains there in the station. So with the 2 trains there, now I'm instead of going to Holyhead for the 3rd station first, I'm building the freight line leaving McGowan, and then I'm going to connect that to Holyhead as well. So it'll be a T intersection for freight line, be like a triangle. Excuse me, sorry about that. I'm kind of stuffy. I had a sneeze fit earlier today, so hopefully I don't have any issues there, but I'll make sure I pause it out if I do. So with the 2 tracks there, then I'm going to add a 3rd track. But before I do the 3rd track, I'll add the gridiron first. You want to add the gridiron first because, especially when you have the directions set up for either track, you'll see me have. Actually, I'll struggle with this first because the angle, I can't get the proper angle. It's all red, but eventually I'll delete that access that was coming off the gridiron, and then it'll work. But um, you want to have it go straight to the gridiron because the middle lane for the track coming from McGowan Terminal, the middle lane is right going in. So when it's leaving, that middle lane will be left going out, going the other direction. So it'll be a two-way entry exit. And the only way to do that, well, I mean, there's ways to do that, but it's harder to explain. But if you connect the connections right at the gridiron, which I'm trying to do there, but it doesn't like what I'm doing. So instead of going from one direction to the other, for some reason, sometimes it makes it easier if you do tracks part way instead of the entire stretch at once. And that's pretty much what I did there. At first, it wouldn't let me because I was trying to go the entire stretch, and for some reason it didn't like it, but now it likes it because I only went halfway and then finished it. So as I was explaining, here I'm setting up the direction, so that's one way in, the right lane in, left lane out. So the left lane out, right lane in. So obviously that middle lane is being used as an entry, exit, depending on what direction you're going. But because both of those directions meet at the gridiron, they could be used either way. So if the train was in the gridiron looking to use that exiting, it would exit and go to the left or my right, going towards the wood. It would be the right lane exit from the center. Well, so if there was a train coming in from the other direction, it would be coming in on the center lane, also the right lane. So basically one train would stop and wait for the other train to pass, and once it entered the gridiron, it would swap sides and go to a different track, and then the other train would be able to use that same track to leave. That's just to prevent any conflicts. So that's why you often see me do 3 lanes. If I ever do 3 lanes in and out, but they split directions, going two sides, that's how I do that. So now I'm setting up the passenger. I wanted to make sure I can have the passenger set up before I continue to the wood station. So I'm going to continue, and this will be the only work of the passenger. There's no reason for the passenger to continue going the other direction into the corn. The corn will not have a hotel. There's no reason to send passengers beyond the corn because it's a dead end. So passengers here will pretty much be a dead end, be end of the line. I'll show at the end of the video. I end up planning on possibly extending the track out of Holyhead, going across the Bay Area into the England Bay or whatever, the English Channel, and that will extend the tracks on the other side, but it won't deal with the sides. Here I'm setting up the gridiron. I always try to make the gridirons match. It's 2 separate gridirons, freight and passengers, but so it's not one gridiron of 6 tracks. There's 2 gridirons of 3 tracks each. I had to get it right there again. I try to talk fast because everything's moving so fast. I want to make sure I get my thoughts out. I want those 2 connection bonuses. Obviously, you can see I have them connected, but they won't apply yet until I actually connect the tracks to the rest of my network. It has to be connected to the headquarters at least. So if this was anywhere else in the map, I would just touch the track that's already connected to my network, and then that would extend the network, so these would be connected. However, since this is literally right there next to my headquarters, I'm going to get it connected to Liverpool, but it will connect to a separate station, and you'll see me develop the difference between the passenger and the freight lines. So this station will share. The only time I share resource stations if I'm going to add a hotel, because passenger is going to come through here anyways. I figure I'm going to put a hotel at this stop, so I'm going to have passenger and freight lines go through that wood station right here. The name slipped my mind and was just going to show it, and then I didn't. And I don't want that bridge. I was impressed by the bridge. It's a different bridge compared to the American bridges, but I don't want that bridge because, again, bridges cost more money, just like tunnels. Early on, you want to avoid bridges as much as possible. Little John, that's what that station's called. The wood there's Little John. So Little John will have a hotel and a diner is what I call them. I always mark them H and D for hotel and diner. And the right side will be the freight, and the left side will be the passenger. But eventually, once it leaves there, it's going to end up swapping sides because of what is on the other side of Liverpool. There's no reason for the passenger to follow the track towards Carlisle that's already built. The passenger will need to go to Manchester instead. So when I realized that, I ended up deciding I'm going to have to swap sides. Every now and then I'll have to swap sides from freight. Freight will swap to the other side of passenger and vice versa. And so when I do that, that's the only time I'll justify bridges. And I still avoid tunnels at least, but if I need to, I'll build a tunnel to make it happen. But I won't need to for this instance, but in the future I have, not necessarily this game, but other games. So sometimes you go from one side and it doesn't like it and it's red, try to the other side. Sometimes you have to delete part of it, rebuild it from a different direction, and that's kind of what I was doing there. So I'll make it, put a pin right here, and then it's basically the bend. That bend right there is what messes things up. So now I got it, both are max, I liked it, I built it. So 3 lanes, 3 tracks there. And that is the freight from Little John to Thompson. Is that what it is? Thompson Terminal? Whatever the terminal is for the grain. I forget the names. I should write that stuff down. I don't. But once I get it built, then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to build the passenger. Passenger is slightly more tricky. I ended up realizing I have to build a cushion there. It's not going to work the way I have it set up. And I'll demonstrate here in a moment. But I want the 3 tracks for passenger as well. And usually it's going to be the same way. 2 tracks enter, 1 track exit. And so in order to add one to the right, I needed to delete that. And so that's what I'm going to do here in a moment. So delete this, I believe. Yeah, delete that, and I delete this other stretch. And then I build the extra. So I'm like, wait, it's still part of the passenger. So I'm going to delete that as well. Because I'm not going to I don't like how that's built. It doesn't want me to build it. So eventually I'm like, okay, I want to delete you. So then I delete it, come back here, rebuild it, and I'll show you why I did that. So as I build it to just to the edge. Don't go all the way. Build it. Then come to here, build it all the way out, but I don't connect it, and that's a cushion. I use that as a cushion. So once I build the cushion, put it right there. It doesn't like to pin side by side with pins, so that's why it was giving me trouble. But you see how the pins are offset. So once I build that, then when I come up here, instead of going to the end, I'm going to go next to it and then go along. So that's how I create the cushion. So once I get that connected, then the 3rd track will be the right side with a 1-lane exit coming out of the wood, out of Little John, to connect to that track that I just connected. So right here is the exit, the 1-lane exit. Or if you're facing away from Little John coming this direction, it'll be the right lane. Right now it's the left lane, but we're looking at Little John. So then I delete this and then try and connect it. It's red at first, but it'll actually turn white as I get to the pin. So it looks good. Finish it, build it, and there you have it. So this will be the 2 lanes. There'll be add the extra lane to the right. 2 lanes going in, 1 lane going out for the passenger side. So that's passenger side. And then that's the freight side. See the difference? See how there's 3 and 3, 2, 1, 2, 1. So, and then line up the gridiron so it looks like one solid gridiron, even though it's separate. So I line up the gridiron. Looking pretty good for this side. Make sure all the directions were already set up. I think they're already set up. And I was thinking about what else I was doing. I was probably explaining something on live. Again, if you want to check out the live anytime, there will be a link at the beginning of this to my live video of this from the 8th. You go back and check out the live anytime. You can see what my original comments were. Instead of trying to talk over them, I just deleted them. So this is an example where I use the right angle slightly because I do need the angle offset. I can't do I mean I could, but it would make it a lot more difficult to connect to the other stations. So about 5 degrees to the right, I still got max. It has enough room that the station is not hitting the Little John rural business. And then at the moment I set those, but I end up adjusting that eventually. It's just kind of temporarily to get part of it out, at least get the gridiron started. So as you're leaving Little John, because it's the freight side going in Little John on one side, it has to be the freight going out because they won't be able to swap sides. The 3 on the right do not connect to the 3 on the left, if you notice that when I set it up. So because of that, there's no way that they would swap sides within the station. So you have to swap sides another way, and eventually you'll see by the end of this video, I'll show you how I built a bridge. But here shortly I'll discover that it'll be a good sweet spot to drop down for the passenger on this side of the hill. But first I'm going to build the freight, I'm going to build the grid. I'm going back and forth because I'm double checking, making sure I knew what my plans were, trying to get a big picture, get an idea what the big picture looks like so I know if I'm going in the right direction, or at least somewhat the right direction, something I can work with. So again, offset, and then I believe I'm going to build the passenger. No, I'm going to put the gridiron first. Instead of building all the way to where I wanted to go, I'm going to put the passenger side as well. So same thing that I've done previously, 3 tracks. So I'm going to have 2 enter and 1 exit. But right now this is the exit. So at the moment I was just trying to get everything spaced. Make sure they're going to say max. Take a moment to get that set up. And the reason why I do, and I'll kind of explain it as I working through this right here. The reason why I do 2 and 3, you could do 2 exit and 1 entrance, however you choose. Usually the congestion is somebody waiting to get in the station. They're waiting to get in the station because there's not enough bypass entering a station. So I always set up the 2 enter, 1 exit, so the 2 entrance gives at least 1 option for entering. So by having 2 different tracks entering the gridiron, once they hit the gridiron, they can go to any of the 3 tracks. It doesn't matter. All 3 tracks within the gridiron, or if you do 4 tracks, 5 tracks, 6 tracks, whatever, all 3 tracks are going to be 2 ways within the gridiron. And if you ever, as I place a gridiron, I don't pause long enough. I think I was looking at my research tree here. I was going to look for the hotel and diner. Actually, I already have the diner available, but I was looking for the hotel, which would be the bed, coming up here in about 5 seconds. Here, next section over, there's the bed right there. So that's the hotel. As you see in the right, hotels constructed rural railway stations provide travelers with lodging and food while waiting for their connecting trains. So you can use hotels at any rural station where 2 trains can meet at one point. So you can have a hotel in between 2 cities, and then the train from the city stop at the hotel, turn around, go back to the city. And I was trying to figure out where I was going to put the hotel. Right here at Clark train station, all my trains south of England will eventually pass through Clark's train station going to the north of England. Because that mountain right there, pretty much everything is focused to that one side of the England island. So that's what I was trying to figure out, is how I was going to set that up. Right now, the one train that looked like it was triangle needs fuel, but apparently I wasn't worried about it because I'm not building it. So here is going to be the main line. What I do for main line, I'll explain that later when I set it up. But basically, the passenger with mixed trains will be on the main line. So I'll have express and mix on the main line, and then the other station will be freight only, and eventually that'll all be explained. So right now what I'm doing is trying to get the right angle, because I know I'm going to Manchester, which is literally to the right, north right. I'll zoom out here in a moment and you'll see, but it's not giving me the angle, so you literally have to walk the angle, and so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to build a station. You can only have 3 stations tops. So I've already got the one with the track, and then 2 that I'm trying to build. So you have to delete one, add another one, delete one, add another one. And So I'm literally going to walk the angle. You see, I'm going to go slightly to the right. And after I build this, I'm going to go to the other side and go slightly to the left. Or actually, no, yeah, I'm going to go to the left. I'm going to delete the one in the middle. And I'm going to build back in the middle, but I'm going to continue going to the right. So I'm kind of what I call walking the angle. See, notice how I'm slightly angling it to the right. And then once I build that, I'm going to put another one on the other side of that until I get the angle I want. So that's kind of what I'm doing, back and forth, adding stations. It's not even the angle I want, but it gives me a good idea what I was doing. Here in a moment, I'll have the tracks set up, and I'll be like, okay, it's perfect, I like it. And I'll have everything set up, and I'll eventually delete it here in a moment as well. So, and you'll see why, but I'm trying to get the right angle to have the gridiron set up. So, prior to that, so many things that you have to worry about, but everything I want, the right angle, I want smooth speed, I want max speed as best possible, little altitude changes as possible. Passenger, I'd much rather have steep altitude changes. But I discovered that, I can make this passenger go on the side of this mountain. As I mentioned earlier, this is when I discovered, let's go downhill a little bit. So we're going to have this passenger line slightly offset to the cliff, kind of hanging off the cliff once it's done. It actually looks pretty good once it's all done. It was definitely a nuisance to build. But at least you'll be able to see it, and if you get into ideas like this, you kind of have an idea of how I did it. Maybe it'll inspire you. Maybe if you're trying to figure things out, how to build next to a cliff or a mountain or whatever, maybe this will inspire you to get creative with how you build your tracks. But basically, this is going to go down, I think I'm trying to match the color. So notice the bottom of that track was on the brown. That brown is the same brown, one shade off brown from where the station's at, so that's basically as level as possible. And I don't want that bridge there. I end up fixing that, but as you adjust inward, the reason why one side's red and the other side's not, it's too steep. So sometimes as you're adjusting things, you have to adjust things back. You just kind of go back and forth until you get what you want. Trial and error. So it is on the side of the cliff, as you noticed. Luckily, that is the far right track going between those two stations. So then the next track will be on the outside of that cliff, or hanging a little bit farther over the cliff. So it's not digging into the wall anymore. All that turned out to be pointless, but I had to build it first to figure out how it was going to be pointless. Eventually, the freight line coming from Little John, currently behind me, will cross over and be a bridge. So go over that bridge where the track is, and over that little channel or whatever that body of water is. So the bridge will go into the station that's to the left, the one I verbally marked as freight, Liverpool freight. And eventually I'll put names on these. I realized there, I was like, that's a lot of access. Actually, no, it's about exactly what I wanted, I think. Usually I try to put the gridirons to the edge of a bend if there's a bend. So if you put the gridiron slightly to the edge or just after, then you have all that straight track after the bend to work with your transition. The transition track that merges with the main track. So now that I connected it, remember what I said earlier, these two connection bonuses can now be established, and they wouldn't have done anything good earlier until I connected. But now it is connected, even though Liverpool has two different stations. These two stations are connected to my network because Liverpool is my headquarters. So just because one track is going one way and then the other set of tracks going the other way, you have two different stations, they're all connected as one network. So now that I built it, we'll go in and ride it. Get to ride it for a moment. A lot of times I like to ride the trains. It helps me, give me a reason to stall. Keep in mind, I'm now at 600, close to 700,000. So So I'm 0.7 million, and I probably started with 1.5 or 2 million. So you spend a lot of gold or silver, money, whatever it is, while building. And if you're building and it's paused, a lot of times I try to unpause if I'm building, depending on where I'm building. If I'm building a new line for freight and it's not going to interfere with passenger, then by all means I'll unpause it and let it play through while I'm building. If I'm building something that's going to interfere with something that's already operational, then that's when I keep the paused. But I try to ride the trains to give it a long enough delay where I'm going to waste time. Right now it's 5 minutes playtime, and it's probably a few days to a week at least game time. So you're going to make some money during that playtime. So watch this right now. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Connection bonus is 264, 220. I now have 1.2 million. Notice I just pointed that out. So I went 0.7 million to 1.2 million. That's over 5 million right there, or over half million. I mean, over 500,000. And then I was like, what the heck is this? It's a circle road. It's because I put the track in the middle of the road. The AI builds their own roads between stations if it's not too far of a distance. And when they do that, and then you go and build over it, they'll readjust their roads and be like, okay, well, if you want to put a track there, I'm going to put a road here. So, because I put the track between Little John and Holyhead, I've now got this wacky looking AI artificial road out there that they could supply their own wood, even though I'm going to be able to supply wood for them. But, it's the computer and they're going to do whatever they want. So they do it to make sure that they're getting their supplies until you can give them supplies more often. They usually only build roads between cities and rurals that are like 100 miles or less, not even that. I don't know what the limit is, but they'll try to get their goods as best they can until you can get them goods for them. So here my dilemma was the track that is currently set up is passengers, but I don't want passengers there anymore. Now that I've decided where Liverpool is, freight will only go through Hamilton Station, the cattle there. So I have to delete this because where the Clark Station for the wood and the wool up here, oh no, wood and sugar. Yeah, I had to wait because that train was in my way. Clark train station to the right, that line going into Carlisle is passenger. So I'm like, well, now I have to delete this so I can swap tracks, get the lines to swap sides. That was the next objective I needed to accomplish in order to sort out freight and passenger in and out of Liverpool. So once the train passes the gridiron, then I can go and delete anything behind it. Now, if we wait until the train's literally right on the gridiron, even that distance right there keeps it safe. But if it was literally like at the gate and you paused it, then it would still delete the train. But as long as the train is well into the gridiron, he's safe. If you delete anything behind him, it should keep him safe. It should not adjust him unless you unpause. Right now the game is paused, so as I go and delete the track here in a moment, it's not going to delete that train. If you get everything settled and established and connected before you unpause, then it's like the train continues on. I can only imagine what the locomotive engineers think. What the heck? It was here and now it's here. The track changed all of a sudden, all by magic. I didn't even see it yet. It just moved. It was a different track. Anyway, that'd be pretty funny, right? So I'll go ahead and delete pretty much all this in the middle from where I put the pin. But before I did that, I wanted to just pan out and make sure I had a bird's eye view of where I was going to go past them. I can just double check and make sure I'm planning ahead. So the track that's coming out of Clark will stay there from the gridiron. I think I keep the gridiron how it is. And I'm just going to delete the track from here to the gridiron for Clark, or if I delete part of Clark, it's just to adjust. See, the train's still there. If I didn't pause right now, he would delete it. He'd move up a little bit. By the time he got to the Hamilton station, he would delete, and it would tell you it's incomplete. It wouldn't delete, it would like disappear and wait for the track to be finished, and it would respawn it at the beginning of the line. which I find is unnecessary because then it just messes up the money. Right now, when I complete this and still in the pause, once it's finished and I unpause and it continues on like nothing happened, it'll be fine. So I do delete all the way to the gridiron, just like I said. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this slightly off going this way instead. And then the track that from Hamilton to the left going to Clark will be the freight, and it's going to have to swap sides. So I think what I do on this setup is the freight will be a bridge over the passenger. But it took me some time. The reason why I go back and forth here, trying to get the altitude set up so where all the track here is at 0% altitude change, which it's not all the way, but I do my best to adjust it as much as I can. I don't mind walls per se, I just don't like walls on both sides. But if it's next to a hill or a cliff like that partly is, then wall on one side, while there's no wall on the other side, to me that's fine. I just don't want it to dig its canal and be like it's in its own canyon. I can't even talk straight right now. So notice how I'm just constantly adjusting the altitude and height because I'm trying to match it towards the 0. I think. So dig, so 1, 1, 1. So I think I settle for that. 0, 1. So what I'm trying to do, like I said, when I was trying to go back and forth, I want that 0% to be 0% on all those tracks. So same altitude all the way across that stretch. There was no need to make it climb up and down too much. But at the same time, it kind of looks weird because it's going to be wobbly. But I was trying to make it as smooth as possible and still keep it as balanced as possible. I think I ended up settling for that. It's just a little bit more. Yeah, I was being stubborn. I wanted 0. I wanted all zeros. You can literally see me adjusting it until I get all zeros. So you can see me playing with it. I dropped that back down. 0 coming out of the station. So I have to drop that back down. So I have to adjust that to where the 1 turns to 0. Sorry about that. Eventually I think I settle for one of them to be 1%. But it's not that bad of an unbalance as long as it's very limited. So now that I have an idea that that's track is going out there, instead of going straight to Carlisle, not Carlisle, what is right there? Manchester. Instead of going straight to Manchester, it's going to go somewhere between Manchester and York, the other town, just north, just to the right of Manchester, beyond, going more up. I think I'm looking, that would be north of there. So yeah, York right there, you can see it. I want the track to meet in the middle, and there will be a T intersection going either way. That way it's balanced. York to Carlisle will be balanced, as well as Manchester to Carlisle. If I went straight to Manchester, then York would have to go all the way to Manchester before it goes to Carlisle. So it's balanced. It'll have a T, but I'm not going to build the rest of that passenger. First I'm going to get this freight set up. Once I get it over, start off with this hill, and then it will have to make its own hill on the other side. But it will have a decent bridge, not too bad, not too shabby. And once I get the bridge settled and I'm satisfied, I end up, I do 2 tracks. I don't know if that's proper setup for the bridge. Is that the proper? Nope, it's not the right lane. I made a mistake, and I don't even notice that I noticed it. I don't think I even noticed. Basically, the right lane went to the left lane. I think I'll figure it out eventually once I go to line up all the tracks, but that's the idea. And then I guess I'm going to go back and work on this. Apparently I was multitasking. So for Manchester Freight, will actually come from the right side of the hill eventually, but I don't build that right now. What I'm going to work on right now is Manchester Passenger or Main, and that will go straight across and connect with York. And like I said, I'll have a T intersection passenger that's going under the bridge from Clark, where we eventually blend with both the passenger going either direction for York and Manchester. Oh, I think I figured it out right now. Nope, I'm back over here. So I'm going to use the multi-station again, but it took me a minute to realize, oh, I have to actually build. See, I want to build the second station in order. It's like, okay, why can't I build a station? Notice down below it says you must first connect the train station in Manchester to your rail network before you may construct another train station in any city. So it counts as its own city as well. And the only exception is your headquarters. You can have two different stations in headquarters without connecting anyone because they're both the same rail network as I explained earlier. So this will be just a trash. I'm going to eventually delete that. I just connected that so I can get the next station added. So basically I'm trying to get it to where it's at the top of the hill. So coming out of the station, it doesn't look like it's a giant cliff. It doesn't look like it's a massive wall of support just to support the gridiron. At least the gridiron itself will be on level land. And that's why I wanted that at the top of the hill, because the rest of it looks like it's going downhill. And that's why I realized I eventually will delete Liverpool 2, which will be Liverpool Main, just I haven't named it yet. But I'll delete Liverpool 2 because I need the angle to be slightly more to the left. But that's what I'm thinking right now, is how I was going to do the rest of the passenger, and then how I was going to do the freight for Manchester. The Manchester freight will go to the sugar that you saw off to the side, and then from there we'll come to the freight right here. That stretch of freight right there before the future bridge that I'm going to build. So there'll be a T intersection before that bridge. You won't see that now, but that will eventually be. And I think I was just pointing out right there as I was talking live, the mountain there pretty much restricts everything going to Severe, but whatever that is down there. Sear, I think. So everything will come out of Holyhead and then rain. So basically, once I get that set up, I get the track deleted, I delete that station, and then I readjust. But now that I've realized I'm going to do that from Manchester, I'm going to also delete the station here in Liverpool, like I mentioned, and readjust so it's slightly to the left, about 5 more degrees. Sorry for the interruption there. I had to pause and start over after having a coughing fit. Hopefully it wasn't recorded. It's kind of the gap was a moment ago. Apparently I'm talking too much. So notice I'm just readjusting. I haven't deleted the station yet because I'm going to use the green area. You can't build without the green area. So I use the station, and then you have to have it balanced just right. And you pretty much have to eyeball it. So what I'm making sure I have enough room on one side for the gridiron going into the hill, and then on the other side for the gridiron. Pretty much Liverpool is in a valley. You can tell Liverpool is at the bottom of 2 different mountains. So I've never been to England. If anybody here has been to England or from England, and if any of this is accurate, I've always been curious to know how much of these are accurate. So reconnecting the station, again, I'm going to have the right lane add, a lane add to the right once it enters the station, but currently that lane coming off, the track coming off what's already built that I deleted, that right lane will be the middle, and there will be a right lane added to the right, or one lane added to the right. So I'm just making, I don't like the way that angle was, but I eventually settle for it because I can make both of it max. But I was like, why is that? It, to me, it just looks so weird there. I don't know. Tell me what you think if you see this. Just didn't like the way it curved. It's max, so I settled for it. So now the 2 tracks are in, the right lane added to it. Go about 6 to 8 miles at least for the gridiron. Add more if you want extra space. Trains are usually 8 or 4 miles long if it's a fully loaded train with 8 cars. So that's usually why I try to at least go for 12 miles. Usually after I put 12 miles, I set the gridiron, I realize it's too much extra. And so I'll figure that out here shortly. Which I wish this is the reason why I started doing gridirons first. I'll try to remember to always build the gridiron first, because a lot of times I'll spend all this extra time trying to make sure this track is all perfect. Got the right length, got the right setup, got the enough access for a parking spot. Remember I said earlier, you want the train, if you have an extra track off to the side, you want enough space for a train to possibly stop, because if the train takes that extra track, then another train comes up behind it. You don't want the train to get caught up because the tail is too far into the track off to the side. So that's the reason why I was like, oh, well, after I put the gridiron in. Apparently I don't adjust it. I'm going to go look this side right now, and then I'll go back and look the other side. Probably to make sure that I had enough space here, and if I needed to, I'd readjust and delete the track and rebuild it again. Or delete the station and rebuild the stations again. I wanted to make sure I had enough room for both gridirons. So like I said, coming out of Manchester, you want the track as straight as possible. I didn't like doing it from that angle, so that's why I deleted it, and I'm going to do it from this angle. It is going to drop slightly downhill. It's not going to be perfect, but it's better than if it was in the middle of the hill where the buildings first starts, or the center of town. So it does come slightly downhill, but you do want it to come slightly downhill anyways, so at least it's somewhat balanced going into Liverpool. It won't be such a steep downhill drop. And again, this will be passenger, so it won't at least have heavy loads, but you still want it to at least be somewhat balanced. So if looking from this view right now, that lane coming out of Liverpool going towards Manchester, that's the right lane exit. When it gets to Manchester, it's the middle lane going into Manchester, so it'll add one lane to the right. So I'm going to continue. I try to be as consistent as possible, and you'll see me often do it with fuel stations, supply depots as well. Be 2 lanes in, one lane out. 2 lane enters, 1 lane exits. It is kind of a weird shaped track, but all sides are max. So I was just playing there to see if I think I adjust that middle to get it to where there's not so much supports. Maybe? No, apparently not. Anyway, so now this right lane exit is the middle lane going into Liverpool. And then there's the extra track for the right lane to add. Because I do that with the same 3 tracks on either side, it's just the right lanes will swap depending on which side you're in and how you're looking at it. But it's the same 3 tracks on either side. So going in and out of the gridiron, the train will always adjust how it needs to get into the right track, entering and leaving the stations. I think I was taking a look at the mountain and seeing how else I was going to adjust. This here I'm doing 8 miles, as seen in the thing above to the right. And again, I'll probably readjust it after I build the gridiron, so I don't know why I do that. But for future reference, just suggestions to you guys as you play this game, if you do, just build the track without doing the connection, build the track extending beyond the gridiron, put the gridiron in, and then you can add the connection or however much extra you want for that extra track. The hill, or the combination of the hill and the curve, often messes up the angle, so that's one reason why I ended up adding a little bit extra. But if you position it right, you do get the max that you need. So that right there should be close to 4 miles. Pretty sure this is going to definitely be 4 miles. No, actually that looks less. But at the moment I don't worry about it, so I think I build the passenger. Going the other direction? No? No, I think I'm going to worry about the bridge now. I'm going to worry about the bridge going into Liverpool. So I'm going to delete this extra, re-angle it a little bit, readjust the angle. Usually if I adjust angles or delete part of the track, I do it in the middle of the curve. So you still have part of the angle, and then you give it enough room. By cutting back a little bit, you give it plenty of room to adjust and make its own angle and keep everything max. Anytime you're building track, the automated system trying to build the track for you will always try to give you the best track for maximum speed. Unless you readjust things by adding pins. The reason why it's red, and I think it was trying to demonstrate why, besides all the mistakes that it's not letting me build, the reason why it shows red when everything else looks good is because it's not built into the station. So I was explaining that as well. But I couldn't get it to show it there, because it was giving me the error message, not letting me actually complete the track. Yeah, that. So normally though, when everything else looks good and you're trying to go into a station, it's going to be red until you actually connect to the station. Only because there's a rule, and I'll demonstrate here in a moment. I end up struggling with that, and so this carries out. So that's why fading out. It's now going to go to 2x for a good stretch, until it changes to another fade to show my solution. But to explain, it's going to always show red going into a station until you build it in the station. But this is the reason why I speed through this, because this right here, it didn't matter what I did. I tried 1,000 different ways, and I'm probably exaggerating obviously, but I tried so many different solutions and I could not get this bridge to work the way I wanted it to. And the reason why is because it's usually a bad idea to try to build the between two interchanges. It's usually a bad idea to try to build a bridge above the track already existing. It's always better, as far as what I've always noticed, it's always better to build the top track first and then build the lower track to adjust to it. And that was my trouble here. But I spent probably 20-30 minutes in game. I eventually, I don't spend as much live. I end up cutting out here shortly, and then I do the rest of it after. And then once it's built, I don't end up getting it recorded how I built it. But once it's built, I'll show you what I did, and I explained when I was live. But part of it will work. I'll get that to work. And I'm like, that bridge is really high, I don't like it, and I was picky about different things, but it didn't matter. None of that mattered. It still would not build the bridge, no matter what. So I adjust, trying to get different things. I didn't like the way that brick was sticking out like that. These supports, it's just so many things that kept going wrong with this setup. I struggled for quite a while. Offline, well not offline, but out of live. I think here shortly is when I released live, and I was like, alright, well, I'm going to keep working on this, so I'm going to let you go now. If you decide you want to check that out and see what I was trying to do, you go ahead and check it out. It'll be at less of a speed, so it'll take longer, but you can see how I was trying so many different ways to get this setup built. It just did not matter what I did. So a lot of times with the solution, when it doesn't work on one way or the other, what I do is I'll break part of it and then I'll adjust and rebuild it on either side, and then try to rebuild the bridge. Even that didn't work. Reason why it's trying to do that is thinking I want it to go below. I had to put a pin in the middle. Even though it says pins are not allowed in the middle, it'll still let you put a pin in the middle if possible. So even though that side of the bridge, now that side won't work. So it didn't matter how I did it. You can have one side or the other, but it just would not let me do both. And for whatever reason, I don't understand why, but eventually I figured out I had to delete the lower track. So I'll delete the bottom half, and then it'll let me build that bridge. That bridge will be built pretty much just like it is right now, but without the track down below. And then once I build the bridge, then I can build the track down below. And I think it had something to do with the supports on the mountain as well, because it kept trying to stick out, if you recall. But eventually this will be built. It'll fade out here shortly, but this will be built, and then I'll have Liverpool freight going to Holyhead through Little John Wood. That sounded really bad, I know. Get your mind out of the gutter. But it'll cross over, and then, like I said earlier, on the side of the opposite side of the bridge, where the track is currently from Little John, it'll branch from that and create a T intersection going towards Manchester Freight. So I'm not sure how, but eventually I'll have to create a T intersection on that side over there. See, even right there, it didn't like that. It was like, oh, I'm gonna put a tunnel below it. Nope, it's because it wants a really high bridge, which doesn't work. I didn't like the way that went. I was like, there's no way. There's no way. So I delete that, and I'll go back to the original bridge I was trying to work. And I was like, I'm gonna do it this way. It's too high bridge, too high this. So there's the bridge, the final project right there. So that's what I did offline out of the live. And after that, I'll go and I'll adjust. It'll pause here in a moment. Let's Liverpool Main, Liverpool Freight. It's really fast, but in normal speed, it took a few minutes to adjust. So Liverpool Main, Liverpool Freight, you see the difference. I'll glance over the rest real quick. The main line from Liverpool Main will go through Manchester Main and will continue going straight towards York. If you had a glance over there, that'll have a T intersection going north towards Clark. Eventually I'll have a straight track coming out of Carlisle. It's going to go to that island right there where the vegetable is, and that will cut back across the ocean towards Holyhead. And then from that island will be a three-way intersection going to Belfast. So that'll be how I cross over to the other side over there. I think that's the island. But this does pretty much conclude the video. And thank you very much for stopping in, sticking around, checking out Railway Empire 2.
Thank you, Jesus, for your mercy and grace upon my life. I pray all those who see this reach out to you one day. Thank you to the game developers of these games and more for the products you make. Keep up the good work. Last but certainly not least, thank you to all my fans, friends, and followers for stepping in, sticking around, and checking out these games with me. God bless.